So we're going to get into doing marker rendering on a cube. I'm just going to use a nice bright colour. This is nothing really different from how you would do as kind of a standard shape with coloured pencils and that, but we'll go from there. So obviously light source needs to be set up. So if we're going to think back to our light scale, how that works, then we're going to apply that to there. So essentially, if the light's coming here, it's going to hit the top surface first. Then this is next, because it's your shadow side, so this is going to be 2, it's going to be 3, and the stuff on the inside, that's essentially the same surface as that. So that's going to be a 3 in there, and that's going to be a 2. So light, medium, dark. Now, we're going to go over the whole thing, because everything's going to be a shade 1. So this means that you don't have to be really stressed out about trying to keep inside the lines. And also with markers, you see a little bit of grain obviously in your side 1, but besides that you don't. So you'll see me go over it and see how it comes out. Also, a good tip is to always test your markers before you start using them, because already I can see this marker's a little bit tired, which makes it quite difficult when you're trying to do a render and then it starts running out, coughing and spluttering, etc. So I'll just tighten up that edge, and obviously being as prepared as I am and being the teacher, I always have some spare markers. So let's see how this one is. That one's much better. Right. So because this is my number 3 side, I don't have to be anywhere near as fussy as this one. So what I tend to recommend to my students is that you start with your number 3 side and fill that in. Because no matter how patchy, and like if I leave that patch there and I'll come back and I'll refill it in, and then you'll see it, a darker patch there, it's not going to matter because we're going to go over it 3 times. So that extra overlay bit where I didn't quite get it right first time is going to disappear. If you need to, outline the edges to make life easy for yourself. I tend to at times, particularly if I'm worried about going onto a number 1 surface. So going from this surface to that, I don't want to create that overbleed, because once I get that overbleed and I'm kind of go over there by accident, it's too late. I've already done it. I can't undo it. It's a number 1 side and I didn't want to make it any darker, so I'm kind of stuck with it. So that tends to be the issue where most students freak out and they're kind of worried about it's a permanent marker. As soon as I make a mistake, I've stuffed up my whole sketch and I need to start again. So learning to work from the places that are going to give you a little bit more grace and then work towards the harder stuff is actually going to make the harder stuff easier, and you're just going to build a little bit more confidence up before you get there, and you're not going to be second guessing yourself. So as I fill that in, you're going to see, oh yeah, there's a patch there, but I'm having to go over the whole thing again anyway because it's my shade 3 side, so not a big deal. I tend to try and render these flat, as if it's a flat shape, so try and render them flat like you would with colour pencils. Just because you sometimes do get some of the lines from your markers show through, so you try and make sure they're going to help re-emphasize what shape that surface is. So if it's starting to say that it's round and it's a flat surface, it's kind of going to be a bit weird. But if it's doing the opposite, where it's actually saying exactly what the shape's saying, rather than unhelping you, it's just going to make things seem more realistic and keep things easier. Right. So I'm just darkening this 3rd side up as much as I can. So you can see that this one here is still slightly lighter than the 3 side. I can go over it again if I wish. I'm just going to go over and do this inside part here as well. So that obviously all needs to be filled in. This is a pretty good exercise, besides doing the shade scale, to start students off on, or to start anyone off on, because it shows them how clearly an object stands out. Also shows them that if you are doing the rendering correctly and consistently, you shouldn't need your pencil lines to help show you where the different faces of a surface are. So now I'm up to flipping it and outlining where my three sides are, because I don't want to obviously bleed over into these surfaces, and I want to keep things tidy as I can. So as we flip over, because I've worked and you can see some slight gaps and stuff in there, it makes it easier for me to know where these surfaces start and stop. Okay, so if that's my three side, this bit in here will be my three side. Always flip and double check. I mean, there's nothing more annoying than outlining the wrong side, flipping it back over, having rendered it in perfectly, and find out that you've made this side darker and then this side, and it's contradicting what you've just been working on, and you did it deliberately thinking you were right. So, as they say, measure twice, cut once. Right. I tend to use the chisel as much as I can, and I tend to use this very tip of it just to do the thin parts, purely because I'm probably a little bit lazy and I can't be bothered having to kind of take the caps on and off. And it probably does help for if I'm wanting to be a bit faster to not have to kind of change lids on and off to then get into using the fat side. Because these are alcohol based and they go on wet, and you should be able to see on the camera that they are kind of wet in the surface. If you can work fast enough while they're wet, they do blend quite well, and so you're not going to have these hard edges, particularly when you want to do something like a cylinder. I'll just go over this side one more time. So now, even though this is a back surface and it kind of seems like, oh, it shouldn't matter so much, you've got to be as accurate as you can, because I can see there's a slight kind of groove there, and as I flip it, I'll probably see it on the other side. So it seems a little bit fainter there, and that's where that groove was from. But you can see I've gone a little bit further over into the edge there, but I've kept it pretty good, and I haven't gone over that top edge kind of mistakenly. I could try and just tidy stuff up from this end, because it should all just fade back in, because this number 3 side can't take any more ink no matter what I do. So if I'm just touching stuff up, it shouldn't matter. Okay, as you can see, there's a few slight errors there. I can also see in there I didn't take that line down far enough, so I'm just going to kind of go over on the front and over the whole thing and just see if that will kind of keep it happy, and just tidy that bit up. But it's obviously not going to, so I'm just going to flip the page and just touch that bit up, which was down there. So what I'd done is I worked up to the line, but I obviously didn't go over where the line was. Now I've gone probably too far. So as we flip it, okay, it's happy, so obviously didn't go quite too far. That there, obviously, is a cube. Fantastic, we're all happy there. What we're also going to do to kind of really push the presentation is, realistically, I shouldn't be seeing a dark outline to show me where an edge of something is. Okay, I have a hand, it doesn't have outlines around it, so therefore products we look in real life shouldn't need outlines either. So what you will find though is it will get a bit of a highlight along that edge. Right, you can obviously tell I'm up at school. So we've got a highlight on the edge, we'll have a highlight along this surface here because the light catches it. If you can put your, have your sketches lighter when you go to put them down, then you're not going to have this kind of dark pencil line to try and work away from and kind of fix up. So I'm also going to use the marker pen here. Also, once you've used pencil and then gone over with marker, it doesn't tend to rub out very well. It kind of tends to get kind of, I don't know, stuck underneath the marker, and it's fixed it in there. So keep that in mind. So if you've got any kind of details, or this is why I wrote my numbers out separately out the side. If I wrote it in the middle of the surface and then went to rub it out afterwards, I'd be stuck with that kind of number 2 and 3 and stuff on those surfaces. It tends to be a bit of a frustration. Probably wouldn't have been quite as bad with a darker colour such as this red, but still annoying nonetheless. So you can see here, with just doing a little bit of this dark pen, it just gives a bit more punch, and it tidies up some of those bits that I didn't quite get perfect. I know, shock horror, I did get it perfect myself, and now I expect everyone else to. But that there will, being able to do it with the marker pens, it will manage to cover a kind of all amount of sins. And if you're going to cast quite a dark shadow, so you're going to be using like a cool grey 5 or something like that, yeah, if you've got anything wrong in those shadows areas, well, they're going to be covered with that shadow anyway. So if I said this is my light source, I'm going to use that as a projection point. So if we zoom out, I'll show you guys how to cast a shadow as well. So we work from there, and it goes through there, through the point, down, through the point, down, through the point, down. This is kind of the way to construct it, but I tend to use it a little bit loosely, because otherwise you tend to throw really long shadows, because this source should have been much higher up and blah blah blah. So what I tend to do is then I'll say my next point's down here, or even lower, and say down here. Because essentially what I know it's trying to do is then you go from these next points, you go through the bottom of that same corner from that same surface. And so if I'm going through the bottom there, then essentially I'm going to say, right, if it's going through the bottom, it's hitting that there, it's gone there. So I'll say, yeah, it's come up to about there at best. Which is, you can see with this kind of rough guessing and just kind of making it just work is fine. Because it's been constructed relatively accurately, and I'm going to just do this just to kind of make it a little bit better. It becomes very believable, and so even if you have not constructed 100% correctly, or you've just kind of fudged it and guessed it, because you've done some form of construction, particularly when you've got something that's a lot more complex, and I will show you when I do have some more complex examples in there, just the kind of, anyone who looks at their brain just says, oh yeah, similar shape, that kind of seems right. Light's obviously coming from this, is coming that way, because lighter surface, medium dark, and then their brain just goes, yep, I'm happy with that. It's the ones that where the light source isn't 100% clear, and then the shadow doesn't seem right either. It seems semi-right, but there's just something that seems a bit off, or you're not sure about things. That doesn't help. So if you've got your light source very consistent on your product, and then it's reasonably believable as a shadow, most people, when they look at it, they don't actually give it a second thought. They just go, oh yeah, that looks good. So that's a little bit of a trick. Shadows, are they important? Yes, if you want to think about it in NCA type terms. You cannot access merit without showing some form of shadow and highlight. So then to go into excellence, you need to convincingly communicate materials in the product. So I can say for this here, this product, if I spend a little bit more time working on the shine, I could bring this up to I'd say a low excellence, because it's very hard to say I've done a really good job of rendering on something as basic as this. I mean, I couldn't do any better, but essentially, because of it's being what it is, it's very hard to kind of say, oh yeah, that's an excellence grade for level 1. So if I had made this cube out of wood and then had wood grain shown on it, then I would have convincingly communicated materials, and so that's something to consider. So textures and different materials react with light differently. So if this was a high polished plastic, you get a lot more shine. You get these kind of, you know, bing, you know, there's like bing spots, and it kind of has a little bit more of that reflecting and things going on. So that tends to work there. Other trick, if I want to make a darker surface, kind of darker area darker, can never really go too wrong with the old 2B pencil, just to push that out. Okay, I just went over that quite lightly, just to do that. And the joy of going over something with coloured pencils afterwards, and you always, with markers, is marker first then colour pencil. Doesn't like it the other way around. It tends to stick to your markers and kind of gunk them up as well. Then it will really not help. So essentially I've, you know, helped communicate the shine and push values out, etc. And I've maybe said, oh, that's a little bit excessive. So I'll just rub some of that back. And I might just say, right, okay, I'm just going to focus on 1 or 2 patches, just to say, oh, it's a shiny plastic cube. It's, you know, this is kind of trying to be cheeky and push that excellence grade on something as basic as a cube. So, and that's really all you can do. To do that. So that's done. I'm happy with that. That works really well as a cube, but then obviously we'll get on to more complex shapes as we work up. So yeah, there you go.